Hi guys, I hope all is well. So it's your girl Farida, and we're back at this thing called literacy. And so for those of you who don't know, I'm a literacy coach out of Brooklyn, New York, and I love all things literacy. We've been talking a lot about breaking the alphabetic code through foundational skills, whether that's phonemic awareness, the ability to manipulate any sound, or reading real words versus nonsense words. And we just started this series of Bibliotherapy where we are focusing on read-alouds and how they help to build comprehension through thinking aloud and also healing the soul. So we're going to continue with that. And today we're reading a text called Thunderstorms. So let's just jump right into it, right? It's been a minute and I'm like super excited to share and really, dive into why read-alouds are key. They are key, obviously, because they help support scholars' thinking and their ability to not just read a text, but to really and truly understand what that text is fully about. Because that's the overall goal, making meaning. So typically when I start my guided reading group, I start out like this. I let them know this is a level L text. It's about thunderstorms and we're going right into it. We don't waste learning time. So let's keep going. So I'm your girl, Farida Goodwin. You can find me at these social handles, YouTube at Farida Goodwin, Facebook at Farida Goodwin. Fluency is Legacy on Instagram, and Fluency is Legacy on gmail.com. So let's keep going. So I always tell them to raise their hand, follow directions, participate, show effort, just to get them excited and to also set the expectations. And effort could look anything like answering one question to answering all questions. I just want you to try and believe in yourself. And so here we have, which I truly appreciate, and I'm just going to move this guy up here, the transferable strategy. I believe kids need to know exactly what it is that we want them to do. So for this particular level, level L, which falls between a second grader or third grader, sometimes fourth or fifth, it depends. The strategy is I can monitor for meaning, comprehension, and recognize when the text does not make sense. I'm also able to read around the unknown words in that way to also make meaning. And when I get to a word that I don't recognize, I'm not guessing it, I'm not using picture clues. We know that that's not the science of reading, but I am tapping it out. And so I always tell them what their strategy is. And so as they're going to read, I'm now coaching them, okay, on that strategy if they need support. We always do word work. That's key. I need to front load those words that might impede your comprehension, where you might struggle with. So why trick them? Let's take the guesswork out and let's give them what they need. So here are the words that are in the story that will be a little tricky. Cast, we know cast has numerous definitions, but in this text, it's used when someone is injured. Enormous, rather bigger than normal, and we would give examples of that. Rattled, most scholars will say, and I had some scholars say, oh yeah, a snake's tail rattles, but rattled too has various definitions, right? In this case, it's a short, disturbing sound, but today we'll be talking about the nervousness, right? When you have that anxiety feeling or those anxious feelings. Planks. They'll say, oh, Ms. Goodwin, I know how to do a plank. And I'm like, wait a minute, buddy, this is not exercising. This is a piece of timber or wood that you see on the floor. And so having these discussions about words and various different meanings is so important to help them to understand the text. And then I also like to offer imagery, right? So, and I'm just gonna lower that a little bit. So here you see the cast. There's an image of a cast. Rattled, she looks nervous, she looks worried, concerned. Enormous, the dinosaur. And then we have the planks, right? And so all scholars, I like to say that they have various ways or different modalities of learning, and you have to provide that scaffold for them. And so I also like to start off with the genre. What is the genre of this text, right? We know that, I'm gonna move this over. We know that a lot of scholars struggle with just the term genre, right? And so I always tell them it's fiction. What does fiction mean? We're focusing on the character, the problem, the solution, the lesson learned. right? I also like to dive into how are the characters connected? How do all of the characters help to drive the story and to also help you to understand, right? And so having those conversations about various genres will set them up for success. And so here we have it as well. Background. Kids need background knowledge. So I say, well, what are thunderstorms? Have you experienced a thunderstorm before? Share out. How did it make you feel? And so that way they get to share their experience, and now they're able to make a deeper connection to the text. I also like to front load them with a little information about the text. Like today, we're going to dive into a new text. I want you to take a minute to preview the images, so forth and so on. I share with them that this text is realistic fiction. The characters are not real, but the idea of thunderstorms are. As you're reading today, I want you to think about everything that you know about thunderstorms and also see who the characters are, the problem, the solution, and lesson learned, and how the characters connect. Today in this story, we have a little girl named Emma. Emma is afraid of thunderstorms, but yet she finds herself and a friend caught in one. Let's read to find out how Emma's previous experiences tie into what she chooses to do in this situation. And so sharing that little bit of information gets scholars ready to do that thinking work independently. So here's the text. And I always model for them what I want them to do. So I'm gonna do that for you. You hear? Lily shouted. She ran to greet Emma. Lily's mother watched from the porch, her leg in a cast. Uh-oh, scholars, we heard that word, cast. Emma came to help her each day. It was Emma's first job. So this is telling me that the mom is in a cast. She must have gotten injured. I'm not relying on the picture. I'm reading that from the text. Now I can look at the picture for confirmation. And it's true. The mom is injured, so Emma is helping. I don't know how I get along without her, Mrs. Gilman yelled to Emma's dad. Right there, I also see how the characters are connected. Emma is helping Mrs. Gilman, and she said, I don't know how I would get along without her, means that she truly appreciates all of Emma's help. Emma's dad smiled. I'll pick her up in a couple of hours, he shouted back. Watch out for the thunderstorms. They've had some real bad ones on the west. Emma shivered. She hated thunderstorms. You're going to be okay, her dad asked. So right here, I see a bit of a problem. I'm going to put P ? It looks like Emma's afraid of them, right? And so right away, that's telling me that if a thunderstorm does happen, Emma would be scared. I also know that the word shiver, well, what do you think the word shiver means? Yeah, it means she's shaking, right? You're right, like a wet puppy. Emma felt like jumping back into the truck, but Mrs. Gilman was counting on her. She nodded and tried to smile. I don't want us to answer this question yet, but I want you to think, even though Emma knew that she was afraid of thunderstorms and she wanted to leave, why didn't she? Don't raise your hands yet. We're going to come back to that. But that's thinking about how all the characters are connected. Later, the sky got dark. Looks like a storm is coming our way, Mrs. Gilman said. She switched on a lamp. Emma, do you think you could run down to the barn and close the doors? I don't want Daisy's hay to get soaked. Daisy must be an animal. Okay. Emma wanted to stay right there, safe in the house, but she said, okay. I want to go with Emma, Lily demanded. Hurry back, said Mrs. Gilman. The storm could hit any time. So here again, we're seeing that the author is showing us that even though Emma wants to do what makes her feel safe, she's choosing to support Mrs. Gilman. And so now here are some transferable questions we would start to ask, right? What message is the author trying to tell us so far in this story? On page 3, why did the author say Emma felt like jumping back into the car, but she didn't? What does that tell you about Emma and her connection to Mrs. Gilman? And what does that tell you about her character? How is Emma's response to the storm so far in the story similar or different to how you would have responded? These questions help scholars to make connections to the text and to the world. I'm not just limiting them to the story, but they'll be able to ask the same questions in various different texts, all about meaning in a transferable way. I also always like to do a book recap. Some scholars struggle to synthesize, meaning put the pieces together. So retelling who's the character, the problem, the solution, and lesson learned in their own words helps. And sometimes I don't always get it from one scholar. I have to take all of the scholars' thinking in consideration, but it's worth it. And at the end, I always ask them, how do you think you did? What was your level of understanding? Do you think that you understood? Do you give yourself a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4? I want them to be proud of themselves and know that they're capable of breaking the code. I hope that helped you guys. Bibliotherapy is necessary. Scholars need to understand a text, not just as a procedure, but as a life skill. When you are a reader, you can understand anything. I'll see you next time, of course. Fluent. Bye.